Crossover SUVs are all the rage these days with consumers because they want to sit up higher and they want to at least think they have the ability to drive over things, even if it does end up just being curbs when they're parking by feel. But how do you get that same sort of feeling if all you have is a really cheap hatchback from the early 1990s? You throw a whole bunch of boxes at it, that's how. But let's take some measurements first. The front, from the ground to the fender, is 23 inches. And the rear is 24. Sits pretty level, 23 in front and 24 in back. Those numbers need to be bigger because those numbers are doo-doo. And the way I'm going to do that is with a bit of parts bin engineering, courtesy of the internet. This is a rear strut from a 1991 Volkswagen Golf. This is a front strut from a 2001 Kia Rio. This is a stock rear strut mount, just because mine are completely shot. Okay, got the car lifted up. I'm going to be doing this one corner at a time, mostly because I'm a lazy piece of shit. Because it's more efficient. Up here, all we've got, 2 bolts. Top of the strut comes off. Down here, it's just like a real car, except everything's really small. First off, that is a 12-inch wheel. It weighs absolutely nothing. The wheel bolts, not studs, bolts are a 14 millimeter head, which is hilarious. And look at the size of this absolutely minuscule rotor and caliper. It's not vented or anything. It's so stinking cute. And then we just have a regular max strut here. I'll just have to unclip that line and undo 2 bolts down here, 2 bolts up top, and this strut is out of here. And how's it look? What sort of condition is this? It's actually not in awful shape, really, but it could be better. It could be more tall. Look at this brake caliper design. It is just a single unopposed piston, but look at how you can pull the pads out from the back, just like, you know, a big, you know, Brembo multi-piston or something like that. That's kind of neat. I mean, I haven't been around a whole lot, but I haven't seen that in a car or brakes this small before. That's really fascinating. Also, there's a lot of life left in those, which is neat. The CV boots also look to be in excellent shape. So at this point, I'm just finding some place to put this. Yeah, it looks as good about as anything else. And I got to get these bolts out. I'm kind of worried that the strut is going to explosively decompress when I do that. I can't tell. Something's limiting the down travel of this of these control arms, which is a bit weird. I should just be able to pull down on it to relieve the strain on these bolts. I'm a little confused what's going on there, but hopefully we can figure it out. I wish I had a spring compressor, but I just don't have one of those. Never mind. There's literally no spring tension whatsoever on this strut. So now I just need to undo those 2 top bolts, which hilariously are the exact same size as the lug bolts, and that should come out. Well, would you just look at that? There's our old strut next to our new strut. You can see the bottoms are aligned here, and the tops, this one's about a 1/2 inch longer, and this spring is quite a bit stiffer. But also, so this is a McPherson strut, which means that the bottom of this is attached to the steering knuckle, which turns when you turn the wheel. The top of it is attached to the chassis, so it has to remain stationary. The Festiva struts all just use some bushings for that, so if I try to turn this, it's very, very difficult. Meanwhile, this has actual thrust bearings. Look how easy that turns. So the car should drive a heck of a lot nicer with this new strut in. So let's go ahead and throw it in. The only real difference here is there's a slight difference in where the brake bracket goes, and there's the secondary bracket for, I don't even know what that is. Something. 25.5 inches. Not bad. Okay, well, driver's side is off for like 5 minutes. I didn't have to take the brake off for this one, but I did have to take a couple bolts off of this coil bracket here. So yeah, this side should go in real quickly. So the brake lines don't really fit through the Kia struts right, so a zip tie will do. That's, I mean, in all reality, that's not going anywhere. I also realized that the front control arm on these cars is also the sway bar. Look at that. Maybe, if you can see it. There it is. It controls the control arm in this direction and also is a sway bar. Moving on to the back, the top of the struts somewhere in here, as you can see, this plastic's all busted up. You can sort of see the top of the strut in there. And the reason it's busted up is because that's what all the clanging is. Yeah, she's cacked. So a whole bunch of Phillips hardware all over the place. We'll get these out, and then we can get to the top of the struts. I have no idea what all is involved under here. That's still a complete mystery, but I guess we'll get there when we get there. Yeah, it's unhappy. So to get it off, just vice grip and a ratcheting wrench. Repeat for like 6 hours. This takes 2 hands. Already got this side done. What you're left with is that. I have no idea what the bottom side looks like, but you've got this bushing, cap, washer, nut. Fairly simple. Easy peasy. Kill me pleasy. So one thing we're going to do real quick is this hole is all wallowed out, and usually this thing is just centered with a bushing clamping, and it's really crap. So to fix that wallowed out part, I cleaned this off. This is just one of the old strut mounts, and we're going to weld it in with the Flexi Boy, which isn't... Yeah, it's not feeding right, is it? You don't have a second jack.
Jack's rolling.
Sure, there. Yeah, that's on something. That's immensely sketch. But there's the swing axle in all its glory. So with the wheel off, we can see the drum brake. The shock is just a simple single bolt down at the bottom, and then up at the top, the spring is actually, the upper spring perch is the car itself. So the spring is just loose as soon as you undo that, and the front shock rod is free. So one bolt and this whole shock assembly will just come right out.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out something else.
It's defeated. It is now the next day. This was the last corner on the car, and I was going to use to show how the rear worked and how it was so simple because it took like 5 minutes on the other side. But of course, the bolt was completely fused to the inner sleeve of the bushing, and things broke, and I had no way to get it out. So say hello to my new compressor that I bought so that I could run an air hammer so that we could chisel out the bolt and actually get that out. So here you can see how these struts go together. There is no top hat. You just set the spring on here and it goes right up into the wheel well there, and the strut mount itself is the top hat. It's very strange. Very low tension because this car doesn't weigh anything. There's like, these springs are super, super soft. And here you can see everything it took to get this mess out of the car. It was not pretty. Lots of angle grinding, lots of stuff. I mean, I also bought some easy outs, which are going to come in super handy. But then down there, you can kind of see it just mounts in that bracket there. There was a welded in nut that broke off as well. So yeah, so there's a little bit of access. We'll have to use a wrench to hold the nut in, a shouldered nut, while we put the bolt in, while we put the strut in, while we do the hokey pokey. But it shouldn't be that bad, hopefully. But this spring is not what we're going to be using on that new strut. new strut. This is actually from a Volkswagen Golf, 91, I believe. And we are not going to be reusing the old spring. What we're going to be using instead is the old front spring. So we need to go get that off of the old front strut. To the surprise of no one, I don't have the right tool for this job. I don't have a spring compressor. So what I'm going to do instead is the thing that you absolutely should never, ever do at all, ever. I'm just going to stand on it. Luckily, I mean, this Festiva, like I said, it weighs nothing. So there's like no tension on the spring. So this isn't really a huge deal. There we go. And spring. And a bump stop. Ah yes, the fruits of our labor. The shock only went this far. Here it is. Alright, let's throw this all together. I forgot a step. This Volkswagen Golf strut isn't quite... No, get back here. This isn't quite bolt-in. You see this inner sleeve here? The sleeve and the bushing are just a little bit too wide for the lower control arm of the Festiva. So I gotta take Monsieur Flap Disc and knock that down a bit. So I'll be back in a moment. So here we have our ground down, custom strut mounty thing. You can see there's almost nothing left of this side part of the bushing, and I kind of angled it like a wedge so that it'll hopefully go in a bit better. And then we've got our spring seat and our baffles and our bump stop, and then part of the top hat and that bushing, and then that'll all go into the strut tower there. And then on top we have a metal washer, another bushing that kind of helps center it, and your choice of fastening hardware. So I'm just going to toss that in and hopefully it all works. Oh yeah, the spring has to go on there too. Yeah, that's all very fun. Boom. This is my least favorite part. Putting this stupid, self-locking nut on here that's just really hard to thread on the whole time. 27 inches. Okay, well the Festiva is lifted now, but before I can drive it, there is one more problem that kind of needs fixing, and that is the shifter slop. So I took the shifter rod out, and here it is. So this is the Festiva's very dirty shift rod, and the problem is the bushings were just gone completely, except for this one here, which I was able to salvage, and I took some measurements and 3D printed these new ones. And as you can see, I hopefully fixed a little bit of an issue with these, which is how short they are. I made two different sizes because the shorter ones are necessary. Anyway, quick cut to how I did that. These are like the biggest snowflakes I've ever seen in my life. What is happening? I'm actually really excited because this is one of the first really useful things that I've actually used my 3D printer for in the year that I've had it. Probably not the fault of the 3D printer, I'm just not very creative. And here we have all four of the bushings loaded up into Ultimaker Cura, and my printer itself is an Ender 3 Pro. It gets the job done. It's one of the best budget printers out there. I definitely recommend it. I designed these in Autodesk Fusion 360 because it was the most simple thing to Autodesk Inventor, which I actually learned in high school and college, which was an absolute mistake. Don't pay like college tuition fees to learn CAD. There's way better ways to do that. If I had to do it again, I would have used Skillshare and just, signed up. And look at this, they've got a whole section for CAD. I mean, there's Fusion 360 right there. You can just browse through and look at all these different, like Revit for architecture people, AutoCAD also for architecture as well. And you can learn how to model and how to properly constrain and do technical drawings and all that kind of stuff. And it's all pretty open and sort of democratizes education, which is, always something that I'm a fan of after dropping out of college because it just was not for me. So if you want to learn how to CAD so that you can make new shifter bushings for your 1993 Ford Festiva, or make something useful, click the link in the description and use the code THIS in order to get 40% off of a premium subscription. Okay, we're back. So these go on these removable bolts, and then it all sandwiches together and it all fits very nice, hopefully. However, there is this other joint here that the bushings are gone in, but there's no way to take the pin out in order to fix it. But it doesn't really need to move much, so I just kind of threw a whole bunch of zip ties at it so it can wiggle a little bit, but it doesn't have any slop in it. That's a solution. That's about the level that we're operating on here. Oh, those fit snug. Nice. Let's take a look. Look at that, I can actually get to second, third, fourth, fifth, and reverse. It's like a real car now. A real car with some slightly interesting steering due to what appears to be way too much positive camber, but you know, problem for another day. Got a double clutch in a second. Synchros are pretty sad, it looks like. This drives a whole lot nicer. Pardon the hatch rattling. It seems to be missing some weather stripping, but like it's a lot quieter in here now. It's actually tolerable to drive. Oh, I also didn't get my doors shut all the way. There we go. To say here, it's just better. Handles better, drives better. I should really bolt down all the stuff in the back. There we go then. First round of modifications done on the Festiva. It's now lifted and you can shift gears. A pretty big improvement, I'd say. Thanks for watching.